Okay, so so this lecture will basically start a new topic, which is pyroelectric materials. It's again part of module 5 itself. So but before we go into pyroelectrics in detail, let us just have a review of what we have done. So we started with this in this module with the discussion on ferroelectric materials, piezoelectric materials. You know the distinction between these materials. From the crystallographic point of view, these materials have to have non-centrosymmetricity, which means they don't have a center of symmetry, and now additionally, so if it's a non-centrosymmetric, then it's piezoelectric. That's a sufficient condition for piezoelectricity. But for pyroelectricity and ferroelectricity, material needs to have a polar axis. Now, in addition to having polar axis in ferroelectricity, you need to have this reversible polar axis by reducing the reversing the polarity of field, and also materials have a Curie temperature beyond which polarization disappears. Now, this is true about even pyroelectric materials as well. Now, so we discussed ferroelectric materials in the context of phase transitions, etc., the domains and variety of applications that we looked at. Piezoelectricity again, which is nothing but coupling of mechanical and electrical order parameters, and there the piezoelectric coefficient is representative of piezoelectric response of the material, and as a result of this piezoelectric effect or the converse piezoelectric effect, you can have variety of applications which can be in actuators, transducers, sensors, etc. Now, the third class of important material in this nonlinear dielectric category is pyroelectric material. Now, as the name itself suggests, now as name itself suggests, you have pyro and then electric. Pyro essentially means high temperature or temperature, let us say heat, or heat, and electric of course means electric, something to do with electrical things. So, it is the coupling between thermal and electrical things which gives rise to what is called as a pyroelectric effect. So, pyroelectric materials, the characteristics are, so you have one, they have a unique polar axis, so which means there is polarization is along a certain axis. This is a unique polar axis, and of course these have to be non-centrosymmetric. And this polar axis may or may not be reversible by reversing the direction of applied field. So, this polar axis may or may not be reversible upon changing the polarity of applied field. So, this is a clear distinction between a ferroelectric and a pyroelectric material. In ferroelectric material, not only you have to have a non-centrosymmetricity, you also need to have polar axis which is unique, but also when you reverse the direction of applied field, the polar axis, the polarization along the polar axis reverses along the direction of applied field. So, that is a clear distinction between these two materials. And if it is a ferroelectric material, because all the ferroelectric materials are piezoelectric and pyroelectric simultaneously. So, if it is a ferroelectric as well, it can be either a single crystal or it can be poled polycrystalline material as well. Okay. So, basically what is pyroelectricity? Pyroelectricity is an ability of the material to generate an electrical signal when it is subjected to a thermal change. So basically, electrical signal upon exposure to a thermal gradient. So delta T gives rise to let us say a voltage V or delta V, depends upon how you define it. And so this is essentially, you can also call it as temperature dependence of spontaneous polarization, because as you change the temperature, as a change in the material, as a change in the temperature is sensed by the material, it has this ability to change its polarization changes, and this change in the polarization is detected as electric field or voltage, or change in the voltage when you expose the material to a thermal gradient. And atomistically, as you know, it could happen due to minute changes in the atomic positions. So very small changes in the atomic positions cause this. So you have this material which is subjected to a temperature difference, and then you have this, along this axis you have delta PS, and you know that polarization is because of displacement of atoms. So you have a clear distinction between the centers of negative and positive charges, and of course when the distance of these between these centers varies, the dipole moment will vary, as a result the polarization will vary. So naturally this will cause you, so any temperature difference which leads to any minute change in the atomic position causes the change in the polarization. But of course the material has to be non-centrosymmetric. If it's centrosymmetric, all these displacements will cancel each other and they will give rise to zero effect at all. And if you keep the temperature constant for a long time, then this voltage will gradually drop to zero because of leakage of charges through the material. So basically you can say that this change in polarization which occurs in the sample as a result of delta T which is applied to sample is nothing but change in the, or it can be measured sort of as a induced current, and which can be of course converted into voltage. Now historically pyroelectricity was first observed in 314 BC by a Greek philosopher Theophrastus. Now this was just a visual effect, there was no quantitative or physics side of it. So as an effect it was first observed by Greek philosopher Theophrastus, and he found that small pieces of tourmaline attracted small pieces of, for example, straw or small particles or ash when it was heated. So tourmaline, when it was subjected to a temperature change, it tended to attract a variety of things. But this discovery did not lead to any scientific explanation. It was merely an observation. Scientific explanation came in 1717 by Louis Lemery, and in 1747 it was, so first in terms of scientific explanation, this was the first scientific explanation. So it may not have been completely correct, but this was the first attempt to scientifically explain pyroelectricity. In 1747 it was related to electricity, and proper scientific explanation proper scientific proof of this came in 1756. So, this was, I mean, as a phenomena, although pyroelectricity has a long history since more than 2000-year old, but the scientific explanation started coming only in the 1715, 1720 onwards, and then in the later part of that century it led to some scientific explanation of this phenomena with relation to the electricity. Now, in order to distinguish from ferroelectricity, now what we are saying that when you subject a material to delta T, you have delta P, all right, and this is what is measured as a electrical signal. Now, in terms of differences vis-a-vis a ferroelectric material, so you have, let us say, a pyroelectric material here. So, let us say these are all negative ions. Okay. In the center of this unit cell, you have a positive ion sitting somewhere. So, let us say here. So, this is the equilibrium position, and we are drawing it at T less than a Tc. So, below the Curie temperature, when the spontaneous polarization is finite, so you have the central atom which has to be positive atom, it is shifted in the up direction. So, below T, below temperature lower than Tc or at temperatures lower than Tc, this is the case with a pyroelectric. Okay. And similar picture if you draw for a ferroelectric. So, these are all anions, negatively charged ions, cation sitting here. So, as you can see, both of these material have polarization vector in this direction, because the central positive ion is shifted in the along this, let us say if this is z axis. Okay. So, along this z axis. Now, this material is ferroelectric, and both these pictures look fairly similar below Curie temperature. Now, what happens when you take the temperature to, let us first examine the effect of electric field at temperatures lower than Tc. So, what do we do when we apply electric field? So, let us say initially the position was in this direction. So, let us say that initially the electric field was also in this direction. Now, so the initial direction, let us draw with this E. So, this is initial, and same case here. Now, when you reverse this direction of electric field, so this is E2. So, you are reversing the direction of electric field. Now, what should happen for a ferroelectric? For a ferroelectric, this atom must move to position on the other side. So, this is a new position that the atom will take. So, this is the position 1 and this is the position 2. So, position 2 will correspond to the first direction of electric field, position 1 will correspond to the first direction of electric field, position 2 will correspond to the next direction of electric field. So, it has changed its direction, the central atom, as you reverse the direction of applied field. So, which means the polar axis which was along plus z direction earlier, it has become to minus z direction, as it has changed to minus z direction as you have changed the direction of applied field. However, in a pyroelectric, you do not see any change, it still stays in the same position. So, no matter whether you reverse the direction of applied field, the PS, the polar vector, always stays in the plus z direction. So, this is one crucial difference between pyroelectric and a piezoelectric. Now when you take this material above Tc, so let us use a different color, at temperatures greater than Tc, which is a QD temperature, at temperature greater than Tc for both piezoelectric and pyroelectric, it will turn to this position, which is central position. So no matter whether you applied field in this direction or in that direction, it will not matter. The central, the positive ion will stay at the center of this cell, giving rise to 0 polarization. So this is the crucial difference between a ferroelectric and pyroelectric. At T greater than Tc, both of them behave similarly, but at T less than Tc, a reversal of electric field, direction of light field, leads to change in the reversal of Ps along the direction of field in a ferroelectric, while in a pyroelectric below Tc, you have a polar vector which is along, let us say, one particular direction. Ps will be along that particular direction, no matter. So if you change the direction of applied field, it does not change, it still stays in the same configuration. So this is the crucial difference between crucial and very fundamental difference between ferroelectric and a pyroelectric. The pyroelectric effect is essentially described as pyroelectric effect essentially is described as Pg is equal to small p plus E del epsilon over del T. This is the equation which is used to describe the pyroelectrics, and this Pg is nothing but generalized and small p is your true pyroelectric coefficient. So Pg is the generalized pyroelectric coefficient, small p is the true pyroelectric coefficient, and of course E is the electric field and epsilon is the dielectric constant. So basically this last term in this expression is nothing but it relates to the change in the dielectric permittivity versus temperature, and this is what is essentially the effect that you measure when you subject this material to change in the temperature. So this dielectric permittivity is related to polarization, and which is what you measure as a result of application of a thermal gradient to a pyroelectric material. And you can since polarization is a vector, you know that now before we go to the generalized form, this equation essentially derives itself from the fundamental expression of dielectric constant. So this dielectric constant is equal to dielectric displacement d. So d is related to, you know, that epsilon naught E plus the polarization term, and when you differentiate this d versus temperature, then you get what is called as a pyroelectric coefficient. So all you have to do is that you have to differentiate that fundamental expression d, which was given as epsilon naught E plus p, where p is the polarization, and so you differentiate this equation with respect to temperature, and all you get is the this expression. So a more generalized form of pyroelectricity is delta pi is equal to pi delta T, and this, as you can see from the previous expression, you can get it. And now this is typically expressed in the vectorial form, since polarization, as you know, is a vector quantity. If you remember module 4, so you know that polarization is not a scalar, it is a vector. Since polarization is a vector quantity, pyroelectric coefficient is also a vector. Is also a vector. So you must remember that. So the generalized form is delta pi is equal to pi delta T. So where delta P, capital Pi, is the change in the polarization, and I depicts a direction, and Pi is essentially the pyroelectric coefficient along I. However, typically what happens is that in reality you have a sample, and this sample is connected to the electrodes on the both sides. And these electrodes measure essentially the change in the polarization. So, since basically the polarization which is measured perpendicular to the electrodes, and since most of the time the samples happens to be a polycrystalline material, you take then, so pyroelectric coefficient in such a case. So, this is a polycrystalline samples, and what you get basically an averaged quantity. So, as a result, for most of these practical applications you take small p as a scalar. So, which is not a correct representation, but for practical purposes it can be thought of as a scalar. Now, looking at what happens if you look at this expression, delta Pi is equal to delta small pi delta t. So, typically what happens to when you increase the temperature, let us say delta T is positive. So, when you look at the polarization of the material goes like this. So, this is Ps and this is temperature or polarization, this is Ps. Okay. So, of course, at Tc goes to equal to 0. Now, the typical behavior is that polarization drops as a function of temperature. So, when you increase the temperature, which means when delta T is positive, this delta Pi is negative. So, as a result, Pi is typically a negative quantity, and this is essentially because of decrease of polarization as a increase in the temperature. And depending upon also the nature of transition, so you have for a ferroelectric material you can have a sudden transition in the polarization, or you can have a gradual transition in the polarization. So, depending upon whether you have first order or second order transition, the magnitude of delta Pi will also be different for both of these different kinds of effects. Now, how do you measure the pyroelectric coefficient? Because the moment you know that it's an important quantity, you need to devise methods how to measure it. And one of the simplest way of measuring a pyroelectric coefficient is you have a circuit like this. So, this is your pyroelectric material, let us say Pe, okay, and this is connected to a resistor, let us say Re, and this is whole thing is kept in a oven. So, let us say this is an oven, and the circuit goes to, and this is connected also again another resistance which you can think of as a reference material Rm, and then this signal goes to a current amplifier, and this is where you measure the output. So, this is the simple circuit for a pyroelectric coefficient measurement. So, you have a pyroelectric material in connection with a resistor, which both of them are kept in an oven, and this is connected in parallel to another resistor which you can think of as a reference. So, essentially in this previous diagram, this is basically an amplifier. So, since the signals are smaller, you need to use an amplifier to amplify the signal. So, this is essentially a current amplifier. You are measuring, as I said earlier, the change in the polarization is measured as the induced current. So, you need to measure that current. Typically that current, since ferroelectric materials happen to be insulating in nature, the current which is passed through these materials is very small. So, as a result you need to use amplifiers to amplify the signal. And so basically this current is essentially which passes through an amplifier is called as a pyro current. And pyroelectric coefficient as a result is given as IP, which is a pyro current, divided by A, area, divided by dt by rate of change of temperature. And so IP here is the pyro current, and this IP is given as Im into 1 plus Rm by Re, where Rm is the leakage resistance of the. So, essentially this Rm which I should not connect using a solid line, rather a dotted line. This is essentially the leakage resistance of the sample, and Re here is the Rc, this should be Rc, this Rc is the input resistance of the amplifier. So, essentially if Rc was very large as compared to Rm, Rm was very small, or you can say Rm was very small as compared to Rc, which means the leakage resistance of the sample was very small as compared to amplifier, then this term goes to equal to 0 and Ip will be equal to nothing but Im, which is essentially the current which is measured across the sample. So, which is the same. And now this term is of course used to amplify the and in pyroelectricity also you have what is called as a direct and indirect effect. So, essentially since all the pyroelectric materials are piezoelectric as well, so thermal, when you heat or cool the material, you have thermal expansion, coefficient of thermal expansion playing up with the material. So, this induces thermal stresses, and so as a result of thermal depoling or poling you have thermal stresses built up in the sample, and this thermal stresses give rise to their own polarization, and hence they change the overall polarization. So, as a result of this coupling between temperature, stress and polarization, because you know that the material is pyroelectric, but at the same time it is piezoelectric as well. So, you cannot discount the effect of stresses which are playing up during the thermal poling of the material. So, this del P by del T, which is change in the polarization, can be expressed in differential terms which take each of these factors into account. So, this del P by del T can be expressed as del P by del sigma into del sigma by del epsilon into del epsilon by del T. Now, you can see this very clearly. You have temperature effect on the strain effect on the stress, and this stress effect on the polarization. So, you've got all the three effects distinguished, which are all built up into the one term, which is the del P by del T, which is the overall expression. So, naturally when we started saying that the material was subjected to difference in the temperature, we were only worried about the change in the polarization, but microscopically when you look at it, when you change the temperature material back and forth, then of course as you change the temperature, because material has a finite coefficient thermal expansion, as a result it expands or contracts, and this expansion or contraction gives rise to strain, this strain gives rise to stresses, and these stresses give rise to change in the polarization. So, depending upon the magnitude of each of these terms, the net polarization will change accordingly. So, I will show you a animation based on this, and then we will move forward to further final parts of this lecture. So, this is again taken from doitpoms.ac.uk, which is the University of Cambridge any materials resources library, and so we acknowledge the help of this site. So, if you start this, so if you read the first line, below the Curie point, the pyroelectric has a spontaneous polarization, and this is of course in the easiest crystallographic direction, and this polarization, as we know, is dependent upon the temperature. So, at low temperatures, which is much lower than Tc, we know that polarization is very high, which is fine because that we know that, and as a result you have polarization built in the material. So, now if you only consider a direct effect, which means there is no thermal expansion, there is no thermal contraction. So, as the or basically there is no effect of temperature on the lattice parameter. So, then as the temperature change increases, the polarization decreases, which is fine. That is what we talked about earlier. In reality, what happens is, since every material has a coefficient of thermal expansion, and pyroelectrics are not any exception to this rule, and which means that as you heat this pyroelectric material, the volume will increase, because typically materials expand as you heat them, and as the material gets heated, as it gets bigger, it produces thermal stresses or thermal strain rather, because this delta A, which is the change in the lattice parameter, is nothing but thermal strain. So, this thermal strain, since the pyroelectric is also a piezoelectric material, this means this thermal strain, this means as the thermal strains form, the associated dipole moment also arises, because we know that piezoelectric material, this strain gives rise to dipole moment or polarization, and this will typically oppose the pyroelectric dipole. So, as a result, assuming that the piezoelectric coefficient is positive with respect to temperature, which means then as the temperature increases, the polarization increases. So, as you increase the temperature, you are increasing the strain, which means polarization is increasing. So, this is what you see here. So, this is as you increase the temperature, the overall polarization has gone down, but this piezoelectric term has increased the polarization by some magnitude. So, as you can see that indirect polarization increases the overall polarization. So, in reality the polarization must have been somewhere here, but actually or ideally in the case of direct effect, the polarization must have been here, but this indirect effect, which is due to piezoelectric behavior of the material, has increased the polarization from here to here. So, if you look at the previous for example, so this was the initial polarization, and when you start applying that, when you start taking the indirect effect into account, this green ball which was earlier there has jumped to the blue ball. So, this is as a result of indirect polarization because of piezoelectric effect, and this is simply because the piezoelectric coefficient is positive. However, this indirect effect typically reaches about 10% of the magnitude of direct effect, and often is unimportant. So, since we are not talking about very large changes in the polarization because of indirect effect, often these effects can be neglected. However, from the point of view of understanding, it is important to know that when you subject a material to change in the temperature, not only its polarization drops as a result of direct effect, but you also have this piezoelectric effect built in the material, because all the pyroelectrics are piezoelectric. As a result, you have the piezoelectric effects coming to picture. So, this is what essentially it is. Now, we will look at some of the common pyroelectric materials, examples of some. So, let me just do certain things here. So, essentially what we are saying is that direct effect is essentially assuming no thermal expansion of material, indirect effect, material shows thermal expansion, which gives rise to strain, and this gives rise to piezoelectric effect, and which will change the polarization. So, essentially what we have here established is that although most of the times for pyroelectric materials we are worried about direct effect, which means we do not take into account the piezoelectric effect into of the built in the material. However, from the sake of from the point of view of sake of understanding, and also from the point of view of materials which have large indirect effect contribution, it is important to understand this reality. So, this is essentially the and this formula expresses all these effects built in. So, you have strain, temperature, change in the temperature giving rise to strain, change in the strain giving rise to stresses, and change in the stresses giving rise to change in the polarization. And depending upon whether piezoelectric coefficient is positive or negative, you will have accordingly the changes in the polarization. So, examples of some common pyroelectric materials. For instance, one of the important one material is LiTaO3, which is lithium tantalate. It has a hexagonal structure, and it has a so this is, let me just define this table. So, this is material, structure, Tc in degree centigrade, and then pyroelectric coefficient in microcoulomb per meter square per Kelvin, because as we know P is nothing but delta P by delta T. So, microcoulomb, basically coulomb per meter square per Kelvin, micro is just added so that the quantities are viewed in perspective. So, this value is 665, and this is minus 230 for lithium tantalate single crystal. Another material which is of importance is often referred as PMNPT. PMN is essentially 0.75 of lead, magnesium 1/3, niobium 2/3, O3. This you must remember from the mixed perovskite discussion in the module 1, and 0.25 of lead titanate, which is PbTiO3. So, this is a mixed perovskite. You have perovskite as simple as lead titanate, then you have a perovskite where A ion is lead, but the B ion is has a mixed occupancy of magnesium and niobium, and this is a very important material. It has a perovskite structure, and it has a Tc reasonably high, 150 degree centigrade, and this is a very large pyroelectric coefficient of minus 1300 microcoulomb per meter square per Kelvin. So, this is a very important material from this point of view. You can also have a BST ceramic. BST is barium 0.67, strontium 0.33, TiO2. So, this is basically solid solution of barium titanate and strontium titanate, where A site is partially occupied by barium or strontium ions, and this again has a perovskite structure, and it has a Tc of 25 degree centigrade. So, it is a room temperature or lower kind of material, but has a very large pyroelectric coefficient. And then of course, you have PVDF, which is a polymer, which is not a ceramic, which is called as a polyvinyl dene fluoride. Polyvinyl dene fluoride, and this has a basically it is a polymeric structure, and it has a 80 degree centigrade of Tc, which is reasonably okay, and it also has reasonable pyroelectric coefficient. But from the point of view of ceramics, these three materials stand out, and they have either high Tc or high pyroelectric coefficient, and which is very important for commercial applications. If you want to go to details of discussion on variety of materials, I would suggest you look at a review by Roger Whatmore, R.W. Whatmore, and this is in basically the paper title is Pyroelectric Materials and Devices, and this is in Journal Reports and Progress in Physics, volume 49, page 1335, and this was published in 1986. So, this is a very nice review article by Professor Roger Whatmore, who is of Cranfield University, UK. This is who is now at Cranfield University, UK. When he wrote this review, he was in a private company. So, you can go through this review to have a more detailed discussion on variety of pyroelectric materials. Okay. So, just to look at variety of these materials, you typically PVDF, I will not discuss the materials which are not ceramics. So, we will just focus our attention on perovskite ceramics. Typically perovskite ceramics they are generally robust, which means they are environmentally strong material. They do not degrade as a function of temperature. So, when you thermally pull them up and down, they do not degrade. So, they are robust, and they are also rather insensitive to moisture and vacuum. So, very sturdy kind of materials, and they have typically high pyroelectric coefficient, and they have low loss characteristics, which means the induced current that you generate in the material as a result of change in temperature, that should not be lost out. Okay, it should be detected. So, as a result, the material must have low loss characteristics, and they operate quite well near TC. And depending upon the material, the TCs can also be quite high. So, you can say the TC can be tuned by tailoring the composition. So, this is a general guideline for perovskite ceramic materials. Now, we look at the applications in which pyroelectric materials are used. So, looking at the fundamental physics of pyroelectric material, where delta P is proportional to delta T, these are used in applications where change in temperature is the input. So, for instance, one of the important application for these is burglar alarms and infrared or IR detectors. So, essentially you have an alarm which has a pyroelectric material, and when an intruder passes in the vicinity of this alarm, the alarm detects his presence by change in the temperature, because human body has a certain temperature as compared to ambience, and this signal, which is delta T, and these materials quite sensitive. These alarms are also very sensitive to the presence of material even to a large distance, and this change in the temperature or ambient triggers an change in the polarization, which triggers an alarm. In order to counter the effects of thermal expansion, one needs to use an identical reference material to counter these extraneous or unwanted effects, and these are sensitive up to a distance of about 100 meters, which is a very large distance. So, I will show you an animation based on this IR detector. So, again this is taken from University of Cambridge website doitpomps.ac.uk. So, we have to acknowledge their assistance. So, pyroelectric materials as infrared detectors. So, this IR detector typically consists of 4 parts, and the material is attached to two conducting elements. Conducting elements are nothing but basically so that they could be connected to a voltage measuring circuit. So, these are the two conductors which are, you can think of them as electrode, and this is the pyroelectric material, and when you put them together they looks like, and when you send a IR pulse to this material, naturally this IR pulse is nothing but it's a long wavelength radiation which represents the ambient, and this increases the temperature of the pyroelectric. As a result, you develop a polarization on the surface of the pyroelectric, and so this can be detected as a voltage. You can make it more useful. You can provide a continuous radiation in the form of IR pulses. So, when you do that, you have a pulse radiation, and this is typically used as a motion detector. So, as someone passes in the vicinity of this detector, the thermal energy which the humans or the object will emit, this will vary, and this will give rise to a pulse. So, it is like a pulse IR radiation, and then this generates a voltage which can then be easily detected. The setup of this, although it looks pretty simple on the paper, but the setup is quite complicated. So, basically the detector, how you make the detector is, it's put in a arc of faceted mirror. So, you have these faceted mirrors whose job is to reflect the radiation, so that the radiation is not lost. So, these are the so this is how it looks like. You have this detector which is sitting inside this arc or a shape which is made by the faceted flat mirrors. So, and so this radiation which is emitted by the body which is passing in the vicinity of the detector, it gets reflected from the mirrors, and of course, at certain points the incident and the reflected wave have to meet constructively, so that they amplify the signal, and this results in the heating of the pyroelectric. So, the input signal gets amplified by reflection from these mirrors. So, as a result, you have this heating of the pyroelectric, and the position of mirror has to be in such a way, so that you have constructive interference at those positions. So, as a result, you have large signal which results in large heating or repeated heating and cooling of pyroelectric. As a result, you have a continuous voltage, and this has a sensitivity of up to 100 meters. Okay. So, this is one application whose animation just now you saw. Another application could be IR imaging. So, not only it can be used, the pyroelectric materials can be used as an alarm or detectors, they can also be used for imaging a particular let us say a body, and body, the advantage, the principle here is, because the body has different parts and all of these parts are at different temperatures, and these temperatures, changes in the temperature at each places in the body are different, they give rise to different signal in the pyroelectric. So, if you just scan the body, you get different polarization, different places which can be used to create a thermal image of the body, and typically the image that you see looks something like what I will again show you is like this. It looks something like that. So, this is the image of a animal. So, you can see that the parts. So, this is a scale which is giving you the meaning of this color coding. So, of course, brighter the color is, higher the temperature is, and darker the color is, lower the temperature it has. So, you can see that which parts of the body have higher temperatures. You can see these ear lobes of this dog, and this eyes, and near the mouth the body has higher temperature, and other parts of the body have lower temperature. This is taken from NASA, this image. So, we acknowledge their help with this image. So, this is how a thermal image is created from a animal or from a body. So, you can create this. So, these can be used for IR imaging applications. So, these are two important applications. In IR imaging, basically what you do is that you take an object, and this object passes through the images pass through the lens, and so a special, basically you have a special lens which focuses the IR emitted by all of this object and through the lenses, and then these IR waves which pass through the focused IR waves which pass through the lens go to the detector, and detector does the processing. So, you have of course signal processing, and this gives rise to eye image on the monitor. So, this is how essentially it works. Finally, you have another application which can be used in for pollutant control. And pollution control is a very important application, because nowadays pollution is becoming a very important issue for the health of our society, and essentially they can essentially pyroelectric, since they are excellent detector of IR radiation, they can easily detect this level of IR radiation which passes through a gas sample. So, since each of these gases have a characteristic wavelength which it absorbs, we can measure the this easily, and I'll again show you an animation based on this, and then we can finish this part. So, again we have taken this from doitpomps.ac.uk. So, we acknowledge University of Cambridge for this. So, the amount of impurities in a gas can be observed by radiation beam detector, and using the setup which is shown below. So, this setup has a IR source which emits an IR beam, and you have the gas which passes through, which has a specific which absorption characteristics towards specific wavelength of radiation, and which is inside a container, and then a pyroelectric which detects radiation by heating. So, the voltage which is produced by radiation which passes through the gas is measured related to a reference voltage. So, you of course have to have a reference sample. So, one is the reference sample, another is the sample which is used for measurement. And when you fire the radiation through the gas, then of course you have to measure with respect to this. So, the wavelength the radiation of certain wavelength is fired through the gas, and this wavelength which is used is corresponding to the absorption characteristic of the gas. So, essentially the radiation is absorbed by the gas, and the comparison of these two gives you the characteristic, basically what kind of gas you have or what kind of pressure of the pollutant that you have. So, this is how you do the detection of gases using the pyroelectric material. So, we have finished this module here. So, in this module we looked at ferroelectric, piezoelectric, pyroelectric material. All of these three materials are technologically very useful materials. Typically, most of these materials, the way we use them in the ferroelectric form, because ferroelectric is always piezo and pyroelectric. So, essentially most of these ceramics which we use happen to be ferroelectric as well, and they can also be used as pyroelectric and piezoelectric, since they have good piezoelectric and pyroelectric coupling coefficient or coefficients. So, and they can be used for a variety of applications, as we have seen. So, this sort of ends this module here. The next module that we start will have a discussion on another technologically important class of electroceramics, which is going to be on magnetic ceramics. So, I hope I have tried to explain the things in as detailed as possible without making it too complicated. So, hopefully it will help you in understanding the science of nonlinear electrics, which is ferroelectrics, pyroelectric and piezoelectrics. And there are plenty of reference books that you can go through. For example, books by Moulds and Herbert on electroceramics. There are specific books on pyroelectricity and piezoelectricity which you can go through as well, which are provided of course in the bibliography of the which will be provided on the online site for the course. Thank you.